Okay, good morning. It's nice to see familiar faces. I think we all know why we're here, the announcement from Commissioner Mike Morath regarding Fort Worth ISD. I've put out an official statement, but I think rather than read that today, I'm going to speak from the heart about what I know kind of our community is feeling, and I think a lot of the emotion is maybe concern, trepidation, wondering what comes next. I know that Commissioner Morath really just took a first step. This morning he explained to media and to Fort Worth ISD that the first step is to initiate the process toward a board of managers, and that'll be a longer application process over the next few months. He'll also do a full vetting process for superintendent. In my conversations with Commissioner Morath, I've had the opportunity to express my full support for Dr. Molinar, how hard she's worked in the last year, the amount of improvement we've seen in Fort Worth ISD should be commended, and she deserves to be at the table as a considered candidate for superintendent, and I think she'll get that opportunity as well. I don't view this as a takeover, and I'll tell you why that is. First of all, this is very clearly legally what Mike Morath had to do. He had those two choices that you guys have all reported on before. But in the initiation of a board of managers, these will be individuals from the Fort Worth community. The number one thing we have to focus on is our kids and students across the city of Fort Worth. This is our largest ISD of the 12 districts that serve our city. Over 70,000 students call Fort Worth ISD home. And as your mayor, I've been fortunate enough to be in and out of schools on a weekly basis, seeing the progress that we're making and a refocus in the city of Fort Worth that literacy and education matters for all students regardless of zip code, then every single student deserves that opportunity. So you have my pledge on a few things. Number one is to keep my head in the game. I will be a steadfast supporter for Fort Worth ISD as I have been over the 4 years that I've been mayor. Importantly, calling it when I see it, the things that are good and bad. But right now they need support because our kids need that kind of support. Number two is to our teachers and our principals and administrators, the folks that make these classrooms work every single day. I know today may seem confusing or concerning, but we still are proud of the work that you're doing across the city of Fort Worth. I'm still reminded of the campuses that have seen tremendous increase in accountability scores. Schools like Mary Louise Phillips Elementary School that I've talked about before, Cesar Chavez Elementary School, and by the way, on Friday I'm going to a parade to celebrate Christine Moss Elementary School that went from a failing grade to an A just in the last year. These are the celebrations we need to have of positive results. But the reality is we still have 20 campuses across the city in Fort Worth ISD that are failing, and we can all do better, and it's going to take a tremendous amount of focus. So while I think there are a lot of unanswered questions today, that's natural in this process. I want Fort Worth to be a great example of a community that rallies together to focus on our students, and importantly, think about what the next steps look like over the next few months as they go through that board of manager process, and importantly, who ultimately becomes the superintendent of schools for Fort Worth ISD. At this point, I'm happy to take questions. I have. I think she's a professional, first of all. She anticipated this happening. I think she's probably a bit in flux right now, meaning she knows how much she has poured into this district over 20 years of service to Fort Worth ISD. And in a very short period of time, really just a year, think about the difference that she's made and refocusing the district where it needed to be. She's not done yet. I think she still has her heart in the district and wants to continue to be the superintendent. And she is our superintendent today, and she will remain to be there in that position. But I think she's also thankful for the outpouring of support, text messages and phone calls she's received to say thank you, we love you, we're right behind you, and to be supportive. But she's also, again, she's a professional, and her head's in the game to focus on what these students and her teachers need every single day, and that will be her job. Let's be honest, it will not be easy, right? You're going to have the current board of trustees there to serve. You've got teachers concerned, you've got students and parents, you've got applications for board of managers, you've got Commissioner Morath, the conservator. There's a lot for her to take on as the leader of the district right now.
What do you think is the likelihood she will remain as superintendent?
I'm not a good gambler. I do not know. All I can tell you is that the data will likely inform what Mike Morath decides to do here. It'll be a robust process that he'll undertake to interview different leaders that are capable of being a turnaround superintendent. I know I've personally expressed my interest in Dr. Molinar staying in her position, but I also recognize he sees it from a different perspective as the TEA commissioner for the entire state of Texas. And he's seen success in other districts, most notably Houston ISD, where he's brought in someone else. Of course, Mike Miles had a long established tenure as a superintendent that was effective. And so he's weighing all those options right now.
Mayor, I know that you have been outspoken. You've been also a source of support for the district and all the things that are taking shape. You said that you will continue to need that support, but describe more specifically how you will move forward in your involvement.
Well, importantly, both as your mayor and really the greater community, this decision is made. We can't look back or be frustrated. Now, there is an appeals process that the current Board of Trustees may decide to undertake. You would have to talk to them about what their decision may be. But because our hands are tied, the decision is made, we're forward thinking. The first most logical next step, Deanna, is really who is going to apply to be on that Board of Managers. If we're going to have a board of managers, we want it to be the very best individuals that are capable of serving in that capacity to work alongside our students and our teachers to make Fort Worth ISD the very best district in the state of Texas. So that will likely be where I have a lot of focus. The other piece is what I do every week is visit schools. Sometimes it's for my own personal sanity to get to sit with those kiddos and see what they're doing. It's a lot of fun, a good reprieve sometimes from city business. But I get a lot from that because I'm interacting so much with our students and our teachers and our families. And that gives me an understanding of how they're feeling, especially right now. I'm sure today's news really does hit hard in some ways, especially those campuses that have improved greatly. And they've seen that progress. They probably ask themselves, okay, was it just not enough? What else can I do? And that can be difficult as well.
Are you disappointed?
No, I'm not disappointed. I'm not surprised. And I have a lot of respect for Commissioner Morath. I've told a lot of groups this in small and larger settings, teachers and parents alike that maybe don't know Commissioner Morath. He's an incredibly accomplished, intelligent individual that is leading education for the state of Texas. He may approach things differently than you or I might, and he may have a lens that's maybe statewide, but he does know what he's doing. And I think he's leading this effort because he believes it's the right thing for Fort Worth ISD, and he has a legal mandate, by the way, with the Texas legislature as well. What I'm most hopeful about is that we can be an example of a community that focuses on the most important things, which is what I led with earlier, which is our students. Yeah.
What's your advice for Morath as he goes through this process that points to the board of managers and eventually the superintendent? And if it's it.
My advice is we're not Houston, we're not Alden ISD, we're not Dallas ISD, we're not Austin ISD, we are Fort Worth ISD. And that the best thing he can do as the Commissioner of Education in this process is to make sure he's listening to the city of Fort Worth. And I don't mean the city as an entity, I mean all of us as community members. And I think his board of managers has the potential to really reflect that. And he does speak with intention. I watched briefly a few interviews he gave this morning, and it seemed to be he was careful with his words. He knew the gravity of the situation. I appreciated his candor and his directness with Dr. Molinar, with myself and others. He reached out to a lot of people yesterday in preparation for the news this morning. So if he can just keep pressing in that direction, I think he'll be in a good position. But that's the most important thing, is to recognize the individuality of our city.
What role does the city play in the success of students? And I ask that because you said, we don't want to look back, but it took many years to get to this point. And I just wonder, as mayor and our city leaders, what role do you guys have to make sure students are succeeding
Yeah.
in these schools?
I was asked this question a few weeks ago, and actually it was more of a statement. The statement was, you've utilized a lot of your political capital on education, public education in Fort Worth, and asked the question was why? And my response was simple: what else would I spend political capital on? These are our children. These are our students. These are the future leaders of this community. We're the fastest growing community in the entire country, large city, 10th largest. We spout off these accolades all the time. But we will no longer be a successful city if we don't care about every single child in every single classroom across the city of Fort Worth. The reality is right now, not every single student in every single zip code in Fort Worth has access to a great education. And we should no longer think that's acceptable. So specifically, I've used the bully pulpit of this office, and it's not specific to me. It's the power of a mayor and a city and those alongside you to really ask for things to be different, and we've done that. Just over a year ago, we went to the school board and said, please take action to move things forward, and look what's happened in over a year. My support, both in education policy work in Austin, has been effective, and I know that for sure, but it's also just showing up and making sure I'm informed where needed and I can follow along where things are going well, and importantly, taking action when our schools need action. And I think that has really proved to be the case over the last year.
I want to pick up on those accolades that you mentioned. We do talk about Fort Worth growing so quickly. What do you think this does? I mean,
I don't think it does. I mean, frankly, we've had some big economic development wins just in the last few months. And when you talk to CEOs or C-suite or board members that are looking at a community like Fort Worth, they will often point towards a healthy workforce and that pipeline that does exist here in the city. An incredibly high percentage of higher education graduates every single year across DFW. And we're also leaning into the truth. A lot of transparency has been lifted about where we are with the state of education, especially post-COVID. I mean, let's be honest, the reality we're facing in Fort Worth is not unique to other large urban areas across the country. But maybe the difference is that we're no longer accepting that that's our truth. We want things to look different. And that's true from early education all the way through post-secondary success into career success. And so while today feels like it might have that negative stain, we're focused on the positives as well and really reflecting on how we got here, to your question about, how long it took us to get to this point, and acting with a sense of urgency to make a difference for our students and their education. Who do I think should be on the board of managers? I think individuals that have an acumen for leadership, probably a cross-section of different industries, importantly, reflective of the diversity of our community across every single zip code in the city of Fort Worth, and also a diversity of experience, right? This does not have to be, we don't want a monolith at all. I think you've got a pretty decent example when you research what they put in place in Houston, type of individuals that are on the Houston Board of Managers, and I would hope we would get that same constituency here in Fort Worth. And I do know, just based on text messages I've received this morning, there's a lot of people that are interested in serving on Board of Managers that, oh, by the way, would never have an interest in running for school board. So maybe that also helps. If I may, Harrison, I'd have to add this too. I really want to thank our current board members for their volunteer service. It is incredibly hard to be in elected office, maybe even more difficult than it ever has been for school board members across the country, especially post-COVID. And I have not talked to any of them directly this morning about how they're feeling, but I don't want this community to speak negatively of their service, right? I think many of them have made tremendous efforts to make positive change in a short period of time over the last year, working together, and that should be commended, and I think that's worth mentioning today. Day to day, you'll not see any difference right now. Make sure your kids are going to school, make sure they're focused, reading is a priority, listen to their teachers, be involved on campus, keep doing what you're doing. And over time, we owe them transparency, clear communication, and what the next steps look like. I think you're going to see the same thing from Dr. Molinar and her leadership. The sun still rose the same way today, and it'll do the same thing tomorrow. We're going to focus on our students. And as things start to kind of unpack, making sure we're communicating with all of our parents and teachers will be a priority for Fort Worth ISD.
You mentioned that Houston ISD has seen some good results, but are there any impacts of that you're concerned about happening?
Well, Houston ISD is not an apples-to-apple example, partly because of the TEA ratings. There was that lawsuit that was prolonged the effort. So takeover was known, but then there was no action taken. It created a lot of chasm, a lot of political fighting that happened in Houston. I really don't anticipate that here for a variety of different reasons. So I'm hopeful that, to the question earlier about negativity, we need to stay positive for our students. I say this a lot, but I think it's worth repeating. The kids that are in first grade right now, they don't get to redo first grade or eighth grade year or senior year in high school graduation. We have to get this right for them. So while we're making significant change and transformation towards turnaround for Worth ISD, we also have to focus on who's there now. In Houston, the data shows the largest growth, positive growth you've seen across the state of any large urban district happened in our largest district in Houston ISD over a shorter period of time under this model of Board of Managers. So we're hopeful the same thing could happen here. But importantly, Dr. Molinar and the board have approved a lot of the changes that you saw in Houston ISD. So we have a head start that maybe could even give us even greater gains in a shorter period of time. Okay. Anybody else? Yeah.
Will the city have to change anything to protect its reputation with its takeover as far as selling itself to other cities to tourism?
That's a great question. Back to kind of positive messaging, that will continue to be a priority. And that's up to not just the district, of course. That's up to our Economic Development Partnership Group, the Chambers of Commerce, the City of Fort Worth. There are so many positive stories that I hope many of you will run with in the coming weeks about what is working in education and preparing our workforce for tomorrow. But we will have to combat some of that negativity that comes over. Candidly, I think there's been a lot of struggle with the word takeover. And I think that feels like a heavy word, which is why I led with, I don't consider this a takeover. Because ultimately, the leadership of the district will still remain in the hands of the city of Fort Worth and our board of managers. And I'm confident that, that we're going to put the right superintendent in place. Right now, my chips are on the table for Dr. Molinar. I know her personally. I consider her a friend and a great leader, but I also respect the process that Commissioner Mouth will go through. But again, positive stories will be needed, especially to tell the good work that our students are doing across Fort Worth. Thank y'all. Appreciate it. You want that?